Не потрібно, ми робили розсилку. Ви знаєте, що Дженніфер Германн, наша американська студентка, яка провела цілий рік досліджень тут, у Запоріжжі, викладала студентам, працювала із студентами Запорізького національного університету, а зараз ми попросили її провести такий семінар, майстер-клас, дати поради стосовно програми журналістики і трошечки прокоментувати деякі есе. Ми, знову ж таки, не намагаємося це зробити таким традиційним, не знаю, тренінгом з навчання того, як писати, як подаватись на журналістику. Просто побачили, що у нас цього року дуже багато подається на журналістику, різні напрямки абсолютно, на комунікації, на піар, і тому вирішили, що поради Дженніфер будуть якраз доречними. У нас приблизно година часу. Тому наприкінці просимо поставити запитання. Якщо запитань буде більше, то я хочу одразу попросити потім звертатись до нас електронною поштою. Однак і до дедлайну, ви знаєте, часу вже залишилось небагато, 16-го ви маєте подати анкету, тому все, що відбувається сьогодні, дуже стисло, для вас це має бути зрозуміло. Всі запитання намагайтесь акумулювати і одразу перепитати нас про все, тому що в останні дні, я просто хочу попередити і тих, хто слухає нас через вебінар, і тих, хто зараз в аудиторії, дуже багато дзвінків, і, власне, коментувати, давати якісь конкретні поради ми, звичайно, більше не зможемо. Отже, я надаю слово Дженніфер, і зараз вона розпочинає презентацію.
Thank you, Ina, webinar folks. Can I full screen this? Okay. Great. As Ina said, I am a current Fulbright student. I've been teaching in Zaporozhye. I've been teaching journalism. My background, so my qualifications for this, I studied journalism, specifically professional writing and film production when I was in university. So that's what I've been teaching to university students in Zaporizhzhia. Most of the things that I will say today are just general how to write applications and how to write essays and not like super journalism specific. So if you're not a journalist, don't worry, still stay. It's going to be fine. A couple things, awesome, about the Fulbright program. This sounds like a very stupid instruction, but please read the instructions before you fill out the application. You have a full document that tells you exactly what each question means and exactly what the essays are supposed to be and exactly when and how you need to turn them in. I promise if you actually read those instructions, it will be worth your time. If you don't, you probably will make foolish mistakes that will just count against you because you could have not made them if you had just read the instructions. So, step one, read the instructions. Pretty easy, right? Not too hard so far. Good. Okay, good. Second, the goals of the Fulbright program are twofold. The first is cultural exchange, and the second is scholarship. So this is important to you because your job is to tell people why you should be a Fulbrighter. So your whole application needs to keep coming back to these 2 points. Anything that is written in either of your essays needs to point to either why this will benefit cultural exchange or why this will benefit scholarship. If, as you are reviewing your essay, you come across a sentence that is not related to one of those things, delete it. You don't need it, and it will not help your application. But this will also help you as you're thinking about forming like the big idea and structure of your application, because these are the 2 things that you really want to convey. So if you're thinking about how to organize your material or where to put your goals, where to put things like that, come back to these 2 things. Make sure that you're talking about them. Make sure that you have actually written about them in your application. It's really easy to write an application and say, these are all of the wonderful things that I've done, and these are all of the wonderful things that I'm going to do. Love and hugs, Jen. Please give me the application without talking about these things. So talk about them. Okay. The next, specifically in an application, and for this application, in addition to the Fulbright goals, these are your goals in applying. So these are the things that you need to convey. The first is why you are a good candidate. Why are you so wonderful that I should give you thousands of dollars to go and study in the United States? You need to convey that. And you need to not be shy about it. You're writing for an audience that is partially composed of Americans, and we are very self-centered, and we like to talk about ourselves and why we are so awesome. And so in the American spirit, please talk about yourself and tell us why you are so awesome. I promise you it won't seem arrogant. It will seem like a strong application. The second is to convey why you need to be in the United States, either for the research project that you're planning to do or for the master's program that you're trying to get. If this is something that you could do just as well in Ukraine, but you just really like American food, so you wanted to live in America, I'm not going to give you a Fulbright so that you can go and eat American food. I will give you a Fulbright if you tell me why this can only happen in the United States. So make sure that that comes across in your application. It's easy to just assume. In some of the applications that I read from journalism students, there's this assumption, oh, well, the United States is better, so of course I want to study in the United States. That's not a good enough answer. You need to explain specifically why it's better and why you want that education. And then the third point is probably the most important, is how giving you this grant is going to benefit Ukraine and the United States. So again, our American spirit is very self-centered. We want to give you an application and a grant so that ultimately it helps us. But more importantly, this idea of mutual understanding, so cultural exchange, that needs to be the end goal of your Fulbright, whether that is accomplished while you're in America or after you come back to Ukraine. You need to very clearly articulate why giving you this grant will help the Fulbright program. So that can be, for example, there was one application that talked very specifically about developing a anti-discriminatory program in Ukrainian media. That's very clearly helpful, and it's a very clear specific goal. If in your application I say, I would like to live in America and then come back to Ukraine, and I will talk to people about my experience. Okay, helpful, but not convincing. Okay, so you need to convince me. Think of this entire thing as a trial. Okay, so you need to desperately convince the person who's reading your application that you are worthy of the grant. Okay, you with me so far? Good. Okay, the next thing. This application, it really is about you, I promise. You can tell me about your inspiring first grade teacher. You can tell me about all of the people you admire, and you can tell me about the American education system. I want to hear about you. But there is a really common mistake that is made in trying to make your application about yourself. That is what I call the fluffy mistake. The fluffy mistake is writing the part of the application that's about you by saying, I would love to go to America to make new friends, and that would be great. We want you to make friends, I promise, but we do not want to give you thousands of dollars to make friends. So don't do that. Just don't. I'm not saying that you should not have that purpose behind it. Cultural exchange and mutual understanding, by its nature, means that we have to talk to each other and we have to make friends and relationships. Feel free to talk about that, but that cannot be the goal of your application. It cannot be the goal for you to have a good time. It has to be more. It is about you in the sense that you need to tell us how wonderful you are, okay? So your entire application should essentially be focused on what an awesome person you are, and then how that's going to influence Ukraine and the United States. You need to be the starting point for this, and you really do need to sell yourself, convince us of your worth and of your qualifications. It's very easy, I think, to be shy in applications and to not want to oversell yourself, to not want to set the expectations too high. Don't lie, okay? Don't say that I have won a Nobel Prize if I haven't won a Nobel Prize. That's a really bad idea. But also set the bar high, okay? If you have had accomplishments, tell us about them. And don't say, well, I like started this magazine, but it wasn't that good, but it was okay. No, I started a magazine, okay? In the way that you word things, you can change the way that we're going to view you, and especially for journalism applicants, that's going to matter because journalism is communication. So those of you who are applying for journalism, you get a double test. You get the test of writing in a foreign language anyway, which is already hard, and the test of communicating clearly and concisely in a foreign language as a professional journalist would do. But it is possible. Don't worry. I believe in you. A couple things about structure. These are points that I pulled out of the applications that I read for international journalism. The first is that it's literally the structure. You have to structure it like an essay. It's not a letter. You don't need a to whom it may concern or a dear sirs. It's also not a bullet list. So please do not give, here are my goals, here's how I'm going to view them, Okay, no, this is not what we need. It needs to be structured in paragraphs, like an essay would be. However, if you have not started writing, and honestly, even if you have already written it, a bullet list is going to help you. You should be able to look at your essay and see very clearly defined points throughout them. So starting with the idea of a well-organized bullet-pointed list is going to make your essay stronger because it's going to keep you from rambling. It's going to keep you from saying things that are not too important and that even you know should not be in your essay. The third point is start with the ending. These people are reading hundreds of applications. They are not going to be interested in your essay if you do not make it interesting from the very beginning. So it needs to be clear from the first couple of sentences what your project is and why it matters. That needs to be very obvious off the bat, and then you can go back and build up and tell us how you got to that point and why you want to be there, but it needs to start off clearly. And it also needs to end clearly. You need to summarize at the end. It doesn't have to be a literal, in summary, I would like to have a Fulbright, but restate your point. And this idea of making it a start, that's the idea of taking your Fulbright grant beyond its literal implications. So you don't want to say, I will come back and I will have finished my Fulbright, the end. You want to reiterate not only why you're worthy of this grant and why it has to be in the United States, you also have to reiterate how it's going to benefit Ukraine and the U.S. and how it will continue to do so after you have finished your Fulbright grant. So if you think about the person reading your application and they get all the way to the end, and this is their like 47th application, and your ending is, please give me a Fulbright grant, I am not going to remember you from that ending because it is the last thing that I read. It's your last chance to impress the person reading your application. These two, the start and the end, have to be the strongest points in your essay. Now, the rest of your essay also has to be strong, I promise. But think of these as the most important. Also, for those of you, specifically those of you doing research, but also applying to masters, you need a goal. You do not need a subject area. So your objective about your essay about objectives, it has to be about an actual objective, a goal that you want to reach. Your objective cannot be, I would like to study journalism. That's not convincing. It's not an actual goal. If you are interested in journalism, you need to find a goal within that. Some of the essays that I read were very good about doing that. One about, okay, specifically creating a women's magazine with these types of media. Okay, good. That's a goal. That's an achievable goal that we can get to, and then they walked us through how they're going to get to that goal. But if you are not specific in your goals, then you are essentially saying, I like to study, and I like America. I would like to study in America. Okay, that's nice. Lots of people would like to study in America. Tell us why. We should give it to you. Also, in your structure. Every paragraph needs to have a purpose, and you need to be able to articulate what that purpose is. So as you're writing, you need to go back and look at your paragraphs, and you need to be able to summarize them in just one sentence. If you are writing and you start writing the story about when you first fell in love with media, and then you get really emotional about it, and you keep going, okay, that's nice. We don't really have time to hear that. Maybe over coffee when you're in America after you have won this grant because you took out that paragraph about the story when you fell in love with media. All of those purposes for the paragraph, they need to fall under the original purposes of why you're a good applicant, why it needs to be in the U.S., and why it's going to benefit Ukraine and the United States. Okay, if the purpose of the paragraph does not somehow fall under those, you probably don't need it. It's hard to get rid of things that you've spent a lot of time writing. I promise, it's okay. Get rid of them. On that note, we have this saying in English that less is more. This is true for applications, and it is especially true for journalism. If you have a sentence that is 15 words long, and you can get across the same idea in 8 words without sounding like a 2-year-old child, choose the 8-word sentence, okay? These people, once again, are reading a lot of applications. Also, it is more difficult to write short and clear sentences than it is to write long ones. If you can write a short, clear sentence with an obvious meaning, that is a testament to your language skills and to your writing skills, which the reviews are looking for both of those. This idea of density being good, that means that your sentences can't just be shorter. They have to still have meaning. So I can't just say, I sat. 2-word sentence. Good, yes, I'm getting a Fulbright. Okay, that's a meaningless 2-word sentence. But if you pack your long sentence into a short one, then it will be heavier. It will bear more weight with the reviewers. Okay, does that make sense? Am I talking at a good speed? You can all understand me, right? Yeah, okay, good, good. I don't want to scare you. Okay, ooh, this is a long slide. Don't worry, though. Foreign languages are hard. You will make mistakes. That is okay, we understand that. Please try to make as few as possible. These are just some common mistakes that I came across in the essays that I was reading. The first, the word research is never plural. Researches is not a word. You can have research projects, or you can have research. You cannot have researches. The second, the beloved articles of the English language. You love them. Please put them in your application. We love them too. We want to see them. We want to see them in the right spot, though. That versus which. Very simply, that comes in phrases that are not followed by a comma. Which phrases that are followed by a comma. So, I like dogs that eat food. Great. I like dogs, comma, which eat a lot of food. Simple enough. Native speakers make that mistake a lot too, so don't worry about it. Okay, professionally, don't start a sentence with a conjunction and or but. Some people will tell you it's not grammatically wrong, but it is unprofessional, and you want to come across as professional. 21st century, 1990s, that's just how you write those things. Love of versus love to. I love to run, but I have a love of running. I have a love of a noun, but I love to do things. Does that make sense? Okay, good. High school, university, college, those are always lowercase unless you are talking about a specific school. So Harvard University is uppercase, but university is always lowercase. For these numbers, we always write out 1 through 9 with letters. So 1, 2, 3, those are all with letters. Anything from 10 and above, you want to use the numerals. Also, typos. You are all brilliant young students. You really don't need to be making typos. Just read your essay over. You know they're mistakes. Just go back and find them. Academical is not a word. Academic is the adjective that you're looking for. For your paragraphs, make sure that you have some separation between them. Either indent them or put a line between. It's just a lot physically, visually easier to read applications where the paragraphs are separate. You do not want to make anything more difficult for your reviewers than it already is. You want to be the essay that was easy to read and also meaningful. Okay, professionally, don't use more than one font, and don't use weird-looking fonts like that. That might have been a technical glitch because of the way that I got the applications, but still, if you have a choice, only use one font. The final is that you have two essays, okay? You have your objectives and your personal statement. Don't combine them into one essay. We asked for two for a reason. We want them both. And don't write more than one. Don't add like, oh, these are my quotes, and this is my inspiration, and these are my goals, which should be a part of this essay, but I made it a separate essay. No, we want two. We don't want three. We don't want one. We certainly don't want 7. We only want 2. For things like this, if you are looking for a style guide, do you know what a style guide is for writing? Okay, a style guide is something that essentially tells you the rules not only of grammar, but of how we professionally write things, put things in writing, like which numbers do we write out with letters and which do we not. You can look for the AP style book, the Associated Press style book. That is an excellent resource for all professional writing. Journalists use it all the time. So journalism applicants, once again, you are the lucky ones who get doubly tested. Aren't you glad you chose journalism as a field? A couple of things specifically for cross-cultural applications. You need to make sure that you explain Ukrainian words or Ukrainian cultural concepts. If you are not sure if the concept you're talking about is a Ukrainian concept, but it might be, find a foreigner and ask them if they know what it is. And if they even hesitate for just a second, explain it. Okay? Don't use Cyrillic letters. That's in the original instructions, so you will know that if you've read the instructions. But don't use Cyrillic letters. If you feel the need to use a concept like some of you talk about surjik in your applications, it's like an interesting linguistic study. But you need to write it out with Latin letters, and you need to explain what it is, so that we're not like, okay, surjik, is that like a pastry? I don't understand. Make sure that you are connecting the goals of your application to both cultures. You are like totally free to focus on one. You are free to focus on making Ukraine a better place or on making America more aware of Ukrainians, but it does have to be connected to both. And that's not necessarily implied in the fact that you want to study abroad. The more you articulate these desires clearly, the more your application is going to be seen as a strong one. And, okay, this buzzword of mutual understanding, really though, really, make sure that everything you write comes back to that it comes back to cultural exchange and mutual understanding, especially for the Fulbright, because those are the goals of the program. Most of these principles you can take to other applications, but that is huge for this. Okay, the third point. Okay, let's read this sentence. This is from an application that did not get a Fulbright last year. I admire television projects that make in America. I want to learn to do the same. That's why I filed their papers for the program. I really need this training. Okay, friends of mine, would you give this person a Fulbright? No? Oh, we're hesitant. Where's confidence, guys? Confidence. Okay. There's a bunch of problems. These, first of all, there are grammatical mistakes. That is going to count against you. Second of all, do not use exclamation points. I don't know how they're perceived culturally In Ukraine, in America, an exclamation point makes you look like a 5-year-old. You don't want to look like a 5-year-old. Also, this concept of show, don't tell. Okay, so this person is saying, I admire these projects and I want to learn, and that's why I applied, and I need this training. Okay, so they're telling us these things. As a person who makes films, we have this rule in scripts that you need to show and not tell. So if a script writer writes, Sam feels nostalgia in his heart and begins an inner conflict, a cameraman cannot film an inner conflict unless I just sit there with the camera on your face and hope that you somehow convey an inner conflict. You need to show all these things. So the points here that she's making are good. I admire television projects that are made in America. That's good. Okay, you need to tell me why you admire them. You can't just say that they're pretty and entertaining. You have to explain. I want to learn to do the same. Okay, good. Why do you want to learn to do the same? So that you can make millions of dollars and go to Hollywood? So that you can show your children cartoons when you are older? Tell us why. Okay, that's why I applied for the program. Okay, we know, hopefully, why you're applying. If you have not made clear why you're applying, the answer is that you are an awesome applicant. You need to go to the United States. And what's the third one? Oh, guys, you know it. And that my project will benefit both and, yes, good, some of you are listening. I really need this training. Okay, you want them to understand this point. You never want to say it, okay? You need to show in your experiences and in your goals why you need this training and why we need to give it to you. The next thing, just some application language. Some of this is a language barrier thing. Some of it is just good practices. The first is concrete plans. If you have two applications in front of you and one says, I want to start a newspaper, and the other says, I want to start a newspaper for minority ethnic groups, which will be distributed through these channels. Okay, one of them has obviously been more thought out, and you're going to give more credit to it. But there is a balance. I do not need to know what color your title is going to be printed in. I don't need to know the font. I also don't need to know the slogan or the formatting. You need to pick out the most important principles and then show your steps that you plan to use to accomplish them for that. That will make your application a lot stronger. The second is qualification and experience. Once again, this application is about you and why you're awesome, so you need to show us that you're awesome. Linguistically, you need to be the subject of your accomplishments. Okay, so theoretically, in the vast sphere of existence, you are the subject of your accomplishments. You have accomplished them. When you write a sentence about your accomplishments, you need to be the subject. Okay, you can't use the passive voice saying, a magazine was created in our university by a group of which I was a part. Okay, no, I made a magazine. Like, you need to put yourself first so that you're part of this. Also, you really need to be goal-driven. In the sense of having a clear goal, we need to show that you, if given this Fulbright, are going to go after these goals. I am not going to give a Fulbright to someone who is interested in journalism. No. I would give a Fulbright to someone who is interested in researching the development of cross-cultural media because of this and that, and they would do that through these plans. Okay, the word interested is not off limits, but it cannot be your reason, and it cannot be your goal or your motivation. Okay, assurance and confidence. This is a very linguistic thing and has a lot to do with the words that you choose. So saying things like, maybe there will be an opportunity, or I might do this. It's going to be a lot stronger if you say, my project will accomplish, or I plan to do this. Okay, use as much concrete language as you can to project your assuredness. We all understand that there is an implicit maybe in these applications. There are things that you plan that are not going to happen. We already know that. You don't need to tell us. What you do need to tell us is your plan and why you are committed to that plan, despite the fact that there are going to be obstacles. These 4 phrases, I think, I hope, probably, and in my opinion, don't use them. I think that Ukraine is a developing media frontier. Okay, no, Ukraine is a developing media frontier, regardless of whether or not you think that that is true. I hope that this Fulbright will enrich my ability to contribute to Ukraine's media. Okay, no, this Fulbright will contribute to your ability. That will happen. Also, when you are writing about yourself, talk about who you are and the things you have done. Don't talk about who you are not and the things you have not done yet. This grant is not going to be given to you on the basis of your empty spaces and your potential and your maybes. It's going to be given on the basis of who you are. And you need to be proud of the person that you are, and you need to show us that you're proud of the person that you are. Because if you've gotten this far in the application process, you have reason to be applying. So, a lot of the essays that I read quoted other sources, either as part of the application or not. That's okay, but if 50% of your application is quotes from other sources, you haven't written your application. All of these other sources wrote your application, okay? So, as I say, if you quote Winston Churchill for like 50% of your application, I'm going to read it and think that Winston Churchill is awesome, and I'm not going to remember your name. Also, in using quotes, make sure that you format them correctly. Okay, make sure that you use quotation marks. Attribute your quotes. If you start off with like 2 block quotes and then a couple paragraphs and then 2 block quotes, that's too much. Okay, the vast majority of your writing needs to be your own. You are free to share where your inspiration comes from. It's part of what got you to the point where you are now, but it needs to be more focused on you. Okay, specifically for journalism applicants, you have both benefits and disadvantages. The first is that Ukraine is very obviously important in media and journalism right now. You do not have to talk about that if you feel that it is not relevant to your project, but it will make your project a lot more interesting. If you do discuss current journalism issues in Ukraine, you need to make sure that you do it well. You can't just say, so there's a lot of journalism going on in Ukraine these days. Anyway, I really like studying this. You have to connect it to your project. But it matters, okay? People are watching the development of Ukrainian journalism. They want to make sure that it develops well and democratically. You have that as a huge advantage right now. So please use it if you feel that you have an opportunity to and articulate it well. The second, like we've talked about, is that you have double the responsibility for your application. Because journalism is really heavily based in communication, you are being judged not only on your foreign language ability, but also on your journalism ability and on your ability to communicate a story, okay, your ability to sell this idea of yourself. That does mean that if you can do all of these things well, it will carry double the weight. But it does mean that you are being judged harshly for them. So please review your applications. That will help, I promise. It will be worth your time. And the final part, I wanted to talk about some of the ways that journalism schools are set up in the United States. If you are looking for a master's program, then Fulbright will help you to find a master's program that will be part of the application and selection process. But most schools are set up with journalism as either a college. Okay, so we have universities and then colleges within the universities. Journalism will usually be either a college or a school all on its own. And within journalism, there will be writing, general writing, journalism or news writing, which will then be split up into print writing or electronic writing or broadcast writing. And then anything else that is media usually falls under journalism. So that is broadcast. Developing social media is huge, radio. Some journalism schools also include advertising and public relations as part of them. If these are your interests, and if you know that you would want to be studying in one of those fields, structure your application around that. Master's programs in the States are a little different in that you do get to define a lot of what you do. You write your own thesis. You choose what you write your thesis about. But when you get this application accepted, when you are in America, because you have done all of these things and won the grant, you want to make sure that you are doing what you want to be doing. So that's the way to do it. If you're curious about it, just research. Look at journalism schools in the United States. The U.S. is all about the internet. So anything you could ever want to learn about a journalism school is going to be online. And the journalism schools all have good websites. If they have a bad website, you don't want to go there because that's their job. A couple other things. How to review. The first is to proofread. Okay, this is typos and grammar and language mistakes. Do it. Really, do it. Even if you were writing in your native language, you would need to do it. The second, make other people proofread. It's really hard to see your own mistakes after you've read the application about 20 times, which you will have by this point because you will have all proofread. I know. Then proofread again. Okay, then a couple questions that you need to ask yourself. Is my purpose clear? Okay? Is my objective, my research objective, clear? Could I summarize it in a sentence after having read this essay? If not, you have a problem. But you can still fix it because you're just reviewing. You haven't turned it in yet. The second, for every sentence you have written, you need to ask, why is this statement here? Why did you write it? And then, does it help to support my purpose? The purpose of showing how awesome I am, of showing why I need to be in the U.S., and how this is going to help Ukraine and America. Everything you say needs to go back to those three things. If it doesn't, you don't need it in your application. Finally, could I make this statement clearer? That is the idea of making your sentences shorter. Also, if you have a long, complex idea, it can be helpful to break it into shorter sentences and then to summarize it with a sentence at the end. These people they're good at reading English, I promise, but they've been reading it all day, and they're very tired. And they just don't really want to expend that much effort on reading your application. So the easier you can make it for them to understand is going to be better. And then the final thing is, could I make an outline from this essay? So regardless of whether or not you started with an outline or not, some people write like that, some people don't. When you're looking at your completed essay, you need to be able to make an outline from it. You need to look at your paragraphs and say, okay, this is the purpose of this paragraph. These are the points that I use to make that purpose clear. This is the purpose. These are how they all come together to my overarching purpose. If you try to make an outline, like physically try, and you cannot, don't freak out. Go back to what was not in your essay and make an outline from scratch, and then fit the parts of your essay into it so that it is well structured. You want to make sure you do that. And then proofread again. You cannot proofread enough, I promise. Even if you read it through and you're like, oh, there's no mistakes in here, it's perfect. Okay, there's probably a mistake in there. Even if I had written, as a native speaker, if I had written it, there would probably still be a mistake in there, I promise. Finally, okay, this is my contact info. Don't all get all excited at once. I'm here in Kiev for the time being. I have moved up here from Zap. I am happy to help you to answer questions about journalism programs or things like that. So that's my email. The office has my contact information as well. Feel free to get in touch with me. I have just talked a lot about things that hopefully you were interested in and listening attentively to, but I know that you have also come with questions. So I'm happy to answer your questions about the application or the program, however I can help you. Yeah. Yeah. I would say that where you get the reference letter depends a little bit on the objectives of your research. I would say, think about the character qualities that are most relevant to your research and where you could get those. If you have been working in newspaper writing and your research is in newspaper writing, you want a newspaper writing reference. Generally, I would say it's good to have a work reference and an education reference at least. If you have volunteering that is relevant to your research, you can feel free to get a reference from there. Ultimately, you're looking for the people who are going to tell the reviewers how great you are. Again, you need to make sure that they write this letter. In Ukraine, I have lots of my students say, oh, I have a reference letter for myself. Will you sign it? That's not the way that it's done in America. These people need to write the reference for you. You can feel free to say, in fact, I would encourage you to say, this is my research. Please tell them why I will be good for it. And if you haven't worked with this person in a while, it might be helpful to say, okay, here's my resume, here's what I did with you. Remind them a little bit of who you are. And also make sure that you give them time to write the letter. The deadline is on Friday, so if you have not yet asked for a reference letter, go home tonight and ask them. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And also just professionally, it's always good to send a thank you after they've written, whether or not you get the grant, to say, hey, thanks for writing me a letter, because then they'll be like, oh, that person who said thank you. 20 years later, I might give her that job that she applied for. So that's always good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that I want to do it, but I don't have enough practice. So what I can focus on to just write as much better as I can. Why do I need it if I don't know the many specific points?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question is how to like portray your interest if you've only just started in the field. I would say portray very clearly why you are interested and what specifically you're interested in. And then focus on, if you don't have a lot of experience in the field, focus on what makes you a good scholar in general. Those principles will apply, why you are good for this field based on what you know about it. And then what specific aspects of the field you want to learn about and how you're planning to learn about them. So even if you don't have the experience, you can talk about your aspirations just as concretely. Yeah. Yeah, good questions. Yeah.
And we are trying to sell ourselves in our essays. Should we use the other additional information about about our abilities that we don't need in our research that we are going to do in America? For example, I have been singing Ukrainian folk songs for 7 years, and it is a point for cultural exchange. Should I use that, or is it's not so?
Yeah. The question, I'm repeating them for the webinar, folks. The question is whether or not to include information that's not directly related to your research. I would say that it depends. In general, no. You want to focus on the attributes of you that make you a good candidate for your research study. But if, okay, so as we're talking about singing Ukrainian folk songs, if you are focusing on that as part of cultural exchange and as part of how you're going to like complete this cultural exchange successfully, then by all means include it. But if you like are a really good ice skater, but you're going into engineering, we just don't really care that you're, like, we might if we were sitting down for coffee, but not in reading the application. So in general, focus on those things that you can apply specifically to your research. Yeah.
Well, my name is Ross. I'm a journalist. I want to ask you about your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working for a channel, and in class I work for newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, should I link my work project or the news report, and how much I need for my portfolio, and does it influence to my enrollment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question is about work portfolios and whether or not we should link to them. I'm not as familiar with the structure of the application for Fulbright. I would say you don't need to link to them in your essays, in your goal and objective and personal essays. If there are other places in the application where that would be obvious, then feel free to link to them. Just be wary of the way that you do. Choose one or two really strong projects. Or if you have what we call a demo reel, which is essentially cuts of your past video work put together in one video, link to that rather than to a lot of examples. Yeah. Great. Are these recommendations for the journalism program applicable for photojournalism? Yes, photojournalism is a part of photojournalism. It's different because photojournalism is visually based, so the writing side is not there, but you still need to be able to communicate very clearly. The question that was just asked about portfolios is very relevant because obviously you want to be able to show that you are a good photographer, but most of these recommendations are general and applicable. Yeah. In what sense? A master's program?
Yeah, about practice.
Mm-hmm.
Ability, practice, while studying. Practice,
Okay.
contain practice projects, and what we get to read after 1 year.
Yeah. The question is about whether or not your Fulbright will include internships and practical application. That depends a lot on the program. By nature of the Fulbright, you are not allowed to take a job outside of the Fulbright while you are there. But because you will be working with universities, especially for journalism, every university has a journalism outlet. So even if your program does not specifically require you to go and be a part of that, take initiative, go knock on the door, and ask if you can work there. America is kind of the land of if you want it to happen, go make it happen. And you have a much better chance of it happening if you go out after it instead of waiting for it to come to you. Yeah. Yeah.
For example, if I am a journalist, but I'm interested in studying languages,
Mm-hmm.
can I choose some subjects to study different fields?
Can you choose more than one field, you mean?
I mean, subjects while you study in the university.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the question is, can you choose more than one field to study while you're at the university? With master's programs, usually not. Usually you have to be confined at least to a college. But what you can do is choose to study one field through the lens of another. So you can study the use of language in journalism or how journalism affects the use of language. It will be more difficult for you to study both journalism and language just because of the way most programs are set up. But again, that depends a lot on the individual university. Yeah?
Talking about social media, as you said, it is a part of a public relations program, right?
In some cases, yeah.
Yes, and if I choose, for example, social media in politics, and will describe it as my purpose, creating this field in Ukraine and developing it here, if because it only started like a few years ago, and in the United States it is greatly used by politicians in different campaigns. Will it be enough as a purpose, just like take American practice into Ukraine, or shall I specify more in, I don't know, specific party, political, or whatever?
I would say, sorry, the question is basically how specific to be in bringing back your results. I would say that you should include the general principle of bringing back, you know, these American practices, but say what those practices are.
It's kind of difficult because I don't know how will it develop in Ukraine even during 1 year.
Yeah,
Well,
everything
so
changes.
I may assume how will it develop and what will be my contribution, but it's really difficult to predict right now.
Yeah.
So I want to take part in the development of the social media here in politics, but even now it's very difficult.
Yeah. Recognize that in your application. Recognize that social media is a growing field. Look at the principles of development. So look at the way even American social media is changing, and you can bring even those principles back. It's not bad to have like broad principles, but a couple things will be better than just saying American practices, if you can point to them. Yeah, no problem. There. Yeah, sure. Feel free to.
Maybe I have one question. Firstly, thank you very much for very useful information.
Welcome.
Unfortunately, I'm not a journalist, but still, can I, for example, use social work and volunteers working with information? Especially, I'm working as students' government in my university in Kyiv and actually in the whole Europe, for Ukraine. Can I put in its additional information or to be better if culture change?
Yeah, I would say the question is about including volunteer work. I would say you can include it as long as you make sure you connect it to the goals of your program, but it is still relevant because that shows your ability to work with people from a broad range of backgrounds, which is going to be very relevant in doing cultural exchange, and it shows your familiarity with a really broad diversity within Ukraine of Ukrainian culture. And so in the sense that the Fulbright program wants mutual understanding and cultural exchange, that will give you a finer edge. Well, I mean, if there's a subject line in the application that is like social work and volunteer or additional activities, great, include it. If you feel that it's going to make you stronger in the essay and you want to focus on that part and you don't have a lot that shows you as a good candidate there, great, include it. But it's not a requirement, and you will know your research better than I will, I think. Yeah, no problem. There's a question back there.
I have a problem with the first paragraph, personal statement. For example, I did have a really very important background. Yes, I did somewhat in catch everything. Yes, but the problem for me is that in study objectives, I wrote really a very my purpose, my project, how to catch a reader, and in study in the personal statement. What should I read? First paragraph. Should I also read something about current events? Because my project is about current events. And or should I start with something that influenced my professional qualification, my desire to become a journalist?
Yeah. The question is about structuring the start of your personal statement. That is going to depend a lot on your individual essay, which I think you already realize in the way you phrased the question. I would say look at the goals of your personal statement as a whole and the points that you're trying to make, and then choose how to start it. You might even write the rest of the personal statement and then go back and write a beginning that's going to draw them into the other points that you want to choose. And that could be either current events or what influenced you as a journalist. Generally speaking, you want to avoid like a chronological narrative in your personal statements. So that doesn't mean that you can't start with what interested you in journalism, but if you do, make sure that it doesn't become like a list of how you developed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would transliterate it first, so use Latin letters, and then use parentheses and translate it. If you think the translation is relevant, like Pravda is going to be relevant, like Ukrainian Brews, yeah. Yeah.
How much time are you taking?
I have already left Zaporizhia, unfortunately.
Do you want to come back?
No, Fulbright has deemed Zaporozhye too close to Donetsk, so they have moved me to Kiev. So I'm in Kiev until the end of June, at least until the elections, but probably until the end of June. If it was my choice, I would still be in Zaporizhia, but alas, I'm here in this beautiful city with all of you. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for coming.